4 diagnoses in the bio, 0 therapy sessions attended. You've seen it everywhere. ADHD, anxiety, depression, CPTSD, all listed like credentials, but they've never actually talked to a professional. There's real psychology behind this. Let's break it down. 1. Labels became identity. They're not using diagnoses to get help. They're using them to figure out who they are. Psychologists call this identity formation. Previous generations used music or careers to define themselves. Gen Z uses mental health labels. Research shows stigma reversed. Mental illness used to be hidden. Now it's displayed proudly online. Having diagnoses signals depth and authenticity. It became social currency. But here's the problem. When you repeatedly identify as your diagnosis, you become it. Psychologists call it self-fulfilling prophecy. The label shapes your behavior. You're not describing yourself. You're prescribing who you become. And everyday emotions got medicalized. Feeling sad became depression. Getting distracted became ADHD. Normal struggles turned into clinical disorders. 2. Social media made it spread. This behavior spreads through social contagion. When everyone in your feed discusses diagnoses, it influences you. It's peer pressure for mental health labels. Studies on TikTok found the algorithm amplifies this. Watch one ADHD video, your feed floods with ADHD content. You start seeing symptoms in yourself. Not because you have it, because you're trained to look for it. Online communities form around diagnoses. Having the label becomes your entry ticket. The diagnosis isn't about the disorder, it's about belonging. And it got competitive. More diagnoses equal more status in some spaces. Your suffering became your identity. That's not healthy. Gen Z brains aren't fully developed yet. The identity-forming part doesn't mature until mid-20s. They're locking in permanent identity based on temporary feelings. 3. Labeling replaced healing. Putting a name on the problem became a way to avoid fixing it. Psychologists call this intellectual defense. You analyze your pain instead of feeling it. I have social anxiety explains why you don't socialize. I have ADHD explains why you can't focus. The diagnosis justifies staying stuck. No need to change. Research shows this creates learned helplessness. If it's a permanent disorder, change seems impossible. The label removes your power. Self-diagnosed people often reject professional help. They're so attached to their labels that contradicting them feels personal. They won't accept a different diagnosis. The generation most open about mental health is most resistant to treatment. They'll talk about it endlessly. But doing the actual work, that's avoided. 4. Mental health became content. Mental health turned into performance. Your struggles became your brand. Your diagnoses became your niche. There's an incentive to display problems because they get engagement. Mental health posts get massive likes. It's relatable and feels authentic. So posting about struggling gets rewarded with attention. This creates symptom performance. You keep symptoms going because they bring connection. People bond over staying stuck, not recovering. Support isn't for getting better, it's for remaining the same. Gen Z uses therapy language without therapy. Triggered, gaslighting, trauma, used constantly, often incorrectly. The vocabulary got adopted without the healing. Mental illness became aesthetic. Fashion trends around it. Cute depression graphics. Romanticized suffering. It looks desirable, not like something to escape. 5. Why therapy gets avoided. Therapy costs $100 to $300 per session. There's a therapist shortage. These are real barriers. But even with free access through schools or insurance, Gen Z has the lowest attendance. Cost isn't the only issue. Therapy requires uncomfortable work, challenging beliefs, facing hard truths. changing behavior. It's easier to keep the label than do the treatment. Growing up with instant gratification lowered tolerance for slow processes. Therapy takes time. You can't skip ahead. That patience wasn't developed, and getting better threatens identity. If you're the anxious one, recovery means losing who you are. Staying symptomatic feels safer. 4 diagnoses, 0 therapy. It's about identity, social influence, avoidance, and real barriers. Understanding it means seeing a generation trying to figure out who they are when mental health became personality. Subscribe to understand the psychology behind what everyone sees but nobody explains.